So let's have a conversation today about frequency, third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension, how your unique frequency impacts how you feel based on where you are in your ascension, and how to navigate spaces that you will be in where you are going back into what you call a 3D frequency versus being in the 4D frequency and eventually moving into a 5D frequency. So, this is a message that I channeled last night, and my spirit team gave me some insight about the feelings that we get when we go back into settings after our awakening where we feel uncomfortable. So this would be like us work, like in our workplace. This could be family. This could be old friend groups even. So these are spaces that we kind of like, not necessarily, I don't really like the word outgrow, but that's kind of what it's like. Is like our frequency has shifted enough that these settings feel uncomfortable for us now. And the way that my spirit team has described this to me is by explaining the difference between how the third dimension is created, how the fourth dimension is created, and how the fifth dimension is created. So let's just start with the third dimension. So, based on the information that was pulled through in this channeling, and I'm just going to invite my team to come and help me with this so that I don't miss anything. The third dimension is created based on, all things are created or based on thought. So if you're capable of bringing your mind with me into this, we are created by one divine being that we call source energy or God or the universe, whatever label that you want to give this being of creation, the breath of life that we all have. This being has a frequency in which it projects itself out into experiences, which then creates our souls. So our spirit is a direct replica of God. It is a exact frequency as God. That spirit then has the capacity through its free will to project itself into other experiences throughout the dimensions and the universe that it is in. And these experiences can be human or extraterrestrial, or really, we could even just be a particle in the air as ourselves. Like, there have been people that have gone through regressions to past lives or done healing work where they have gone into a setting where they realize that their only experience in that projection is just to observe and just to be present, just to be like a star or a particle in the quantum field, like a piece of dust. So it's really interesting the different experiences that we can have and how the human logical mind, we cannot comprehend all these experiences. From our understanding, this is it. But from understandings outside of this experience, there's multi-dimensional beings, and there's many different things that we could be based on the experiences that have been thought into existence by God. So for us, our soul, part of our spirit, which created our soul, is projected into a human experience, human body. And because we are God, the God, thought of God, we are separated from God. Therefore, we begin to create based on the thinking that we can have within this dimension. The thinking is then what creates the reality. So when we think in a third dimensional way, we think in survival mechanism, we think in fear, we think in like power. We think of people have power and people don't have power. We think in poverty. We think in limitations. We think in resentment and anger. There's all these low vibrational energies that we project into the world. And then what we see happening around us is the experience of that playing out in the physical. So, in order to have an act of hate, there has to be first a thought and a feeling, then that manifests into a physical experience. So, in the third dimension, there is this created ability to have these emotions, sensations, and feelings. Also within the third dimension is light. It's not just all darkness, because there is no separation from God, no matter what realm you are in. And in that other part of the third dimension is light. However, the light is not as a high frequency as it would be if you were to a shift in your consciousness into another dimension. So in the third dimension, you have love, but that love might appear to be selfish. It might appear to have attachments to it. It might appear to have roles or identities. The love is very conditional in the third dimension. So it's not that love doesn't, reside in that density. We have had love on the earth since the beginning of it. It's just accessing that requires being aware of that frequency of love. So love created between two humans, love created between a person and an animal, love created in a work of art, whatever that might be. There is projections of love frequency in the world, which then end up in behaviors, feelings, and sensations of compassion, empathy, kindness, service, giving, all the outward experiences that love could bring us into. So in the third dimension, you have the duality of these two things, of light and darkness, of pain, suffering, and fear, and love based on conditional things. Then what happens with an ascension process is you begin to become more self-aware. You begin to see your patterns, behaviors, you begin to see your actions, you begin to notice your triggers, you begin to notice why you behave a certain way, what maybe that behavior came from, what is behind your motivation. Like, you start to get to become like very aware. Like, self-realization becomes a huge part of your expansion when you begin to ascend. This is why those who have had a true spiritual awakening will begin to walk the path of healing, because the path of healing brings you back to yourself. And back to yourself is back to source, because you are source, because you are that projection of God sent out to have an experience in the universe as yourself, pretending to be something different, and then working yourself back to yourself. So the way I see this in my mind is like God's energy is like a boomerang. It throws itself out and it hits the edge of its own thought, which is us. We are the farthest thought, like we are God's thought, but we're like, if you could imagine sending a thought out into the world, and that thought moving, and reaching a point, and then coming back to yourself, like you're projecting your thought back to yourself. This is what God is doing. It's projecting itself outward and then retreating itself back. So the experience is to go learn and then to bring it back, to go learn and then to go bring it back. So what we have done is we projected ourselves into the third dimension to learn, and now we're bringing ourselves back. God is bringing itself back into its own knowing and own being. So as we ascend and we become more self-aware, self-realization, self-healing, self-examination, understanding how you perceive yourself and how you project yourself in the world, then you become aware of, I am the creator of my reality. Once you become aware of, I am the creator of my reality, you begin to adjust your thinking and the frequency you hold, which rises your vibration and gives you the ability to shift and change the reality that you live in. So, no longer identifying as a victim, or no longer identifying as someone in poverty, or no longer identifying as a someone that can't do something. There's all these shifts that take place in your mind where you start to see yourself different. Then that reflection is sent out and then brought back to you. But it's all about the vibration in which you are residing in. So the more you come into that self-awareness, the more you shift into a higher frequency, which brings you into the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is all about acclimating and learning how to hold that inner knowing, to hold that self-realization, to hold the frequency. And the more you hold it, the more natural it becomes. In the beginning of your stages of healing and learning how to create a new reality for yourself, you're more likely to look at what's going on around you and believe that is your truth, instead of looking at it and thinking, wait, I can change this based on what I believe about myself. And then I can project a new reality outside that will then project back to me. So the 4D is all about learning how to project correctly, how to project a new reality, how to come back into the energetics of love, and then see that love being shared outside of you and then reflected back to you. Eventually, what will take place is humanity will shift into that fifth dimension, which will be even more love frequency, more self awareness, more ability to create and manifest your reality. But we're in the middle stage of learning how to fully embrace that part of ourselves. Because if we were to jump from the third dimension to the fifth dimension, one, we could not contain it. We could not manage that frequency because we have to learn how to think that way. But also, the fifth dimension is where the spirit realm resides. And so we would actually have to leave our physical body to move into the fifth dimension at this point in order to maintain it. But what is happening is the human being, the humankind, are shifting in their ability to contain frequency in their physical vessel as well as their spiritual vessel, which then is causing and ascending into a higher frequency, which over time we will move into that fifth dimension. And then what will take place is the fourth dimension will then become the lower vibrations that we feel. So if you imagine now in the fourth dimension, we tap back and forth between the third and fourth dimension all day long. We see the news, we see the pain, we see and experience things that we still have to go to our workplace. We still have to engage with certain family or friends or, but we're learning. I have a choice though. I have a choice. I can believe I have to stay in this, or I can create the new reality for myself. And when you find your alignment, you find the passion, you find the purpose, you find the drive and the belief that I can do something different. I can create something different, but that takes a little bit of time to get there. And this is why when you first have an awakening, it's really uncomfortable, but it's important to sit with the uncomfortable feeling instead of try to jump into the 4D because you can't maintain it yet. So there's a training ground to move into that frequency. And then eventually you will be able to step out and begin to do the process of the new reality creating, where you step into more of a soul alignment position or job, where you step into a soul aligned relationship, where you find other individuals or friends that resonate at the same frequency as you. Instead of like maybe you once hung out with friends and went drinking all the time. And when you had your awakening, drinking no longer was what you wanted in your reality. So you slowly moved away from that. It doesn't mean it was easy to do so because there's grief along the way, but you can't fit into that place anymore because your frequency doesn't align with it. So what's happening throughout this process is we're tapping in and out of the 4D, 3D, 4D, 3D. And the reason it feels uncomfortable to move into 3D sometimes is because we have not yet fully integrated the light that we are moving into the 4D, and we're not really fully comfortable with that in ourselves yet. So when we go back into an old setting, we merge back into that frequency, which triggers our light, which causes it to feel uncomfortable because we're like, wait, I don't resonate with this anymore. I don't fit in here anymore. I don't align with this anymore. And so it feels uncomfortable for me to be there. But the interesting thing is Spirit says it's not about fitting in or resonating at that frequency or fighting against it. It's about holding your frequency in those settings and being comfortable with your light and how the light impacts the frequency around you. And we'll just use the energy of darkness, how the light impacts the darkness around you. Then instead of it absorbing in your energy, you shift that. And this is how we're going to be pulling in a higher frequency for all humanity, is by us standing in our power in those settings, clearing out that darkness and letting go of the expectation on what it does. We're not here to waken anybody. We're not here to convince other people to come with us. We're here to be the light beam, the lighthouse, you may say, that holds the frequency for the other people to find their way. So as Spirit was explaining to me, they basically said the reason you would feel uncomfortable in these settings is because you're not comfortable with your light yet, because you fully don't trust yourself. You don't trust the light you hold. You shrink yourself in those settings. And when you shrink yourself, you're out of alignment and you feel bad. So don't shrink yourself. Hold your frequency, hold your light. It doesn't mean you go in combatively. It doesn't mean you go in arguing. You don't go in to convince things. You go in to hold your truth. And your truth is just your frequency. It doesn't even have to be anything you say sometimes. So just be you, fully you as your authentic self. And then what happens is magic, is that it just starts to change the frequency, or that frequency that no longer resides with you just begins to shift out of your reality. And that's what causes these splits to take place in our life, where that part of my life is no longer aligned with me. So therefore, I don't even communicate. I don't even see it. I don't even know it's there anymore because I'm so focused on this energy and where I'm going. So becoming comfortable with our light is what we're here to do, and to hold that light in that frequency. Now, the other interesting thing that Spirit has explained to me with this is that as we continue to shift and when we continue to hold that frequency of light, we start to reside and we start to manifest that more. They're giving me glimpses of how the fifth dimension, the door of the fifth dimension, is starting to open. And eventually there's going to be waves of people that start moving into the fifth dimension, which are going to allow the opportunity for others to begin to follow. And so someone has to hold the light for it to continue on. And this is why there are so many people on the earth that are holding the frequencies, such as light workers, healers, and the angelic beings that have come to volunteer on earth. Here's another interesting thing that came to my mind as I was thinking about this last night. And this is something I need to sit with a little bit longer, but when Spirit brought it to my attention, it made a lot of sense to me. You may have heard of the 144,000 light beings, or the chosen ones, you might say, that have been coming to Earth or are supposedly on Earth. The way Spirit explained this to me last night is that there has always been at least 144,000 light beings on Earth holding a frequency, because they hold the grid of light for humanity to have the experience in the darkness. Because without having something holding light, then humanity could get lost in the darkness because it's such a forgetful place. And so what is happening is that this is all worked together in the duality of the light and darkness. And because the growth has been happening in the way that, we've been working, it's all beginning to ascend together. So even the darkness is shifting into a higher frequency. And eventually, the 4D frequency will be considered the fifth dimension's lower dimension. And if you imagine, if we are all able to get into the frequency of love and unity and compassion, and that is the biggest struggle that we have on earth, then that creates a new reality and a new world and a new earth for us to live into. So instead of having war and rage and like all this destruction that we see taking place, we're going to see things like trying to keep our garden alive, or like there's going to be the shift in what is hard is going to become less hard because we are gaining the ability and the awareness of, I don't have to agree with that with my energy and my mind, and I can create something new just by simply shifting my focus, shifting my mindset, and believing that there's more for me. And I create this reality not just for myself, but I pull other people into that as well to help them create it. Here's another really cool thing that Spirit explained to me, and this is why we cannot force other people to awaken. If you've had a real true spiritual awakening, you know that nobody convinced you to have that awakening. That happened based on something you experienced on your own, whether that was reading something, seeing something, hearing something, experiencing something. It had to come from yourself, because this journey is about self, is about coming back to the self. So if somebody is coming to you and trying to convince you of something, you are less likely to have a true awakening than you are if it comes from internally and changes you from the inside out. So this is why we cannot waken other people. We cannot force other people to shift in their consciousness, because that is an individual frequency they hold. Now, as we ride in frequency, it's going to become more unified. But for now, in the third dimension and in a little bit into the fourth dimension, everything is about coming back to the individual, about the individual power and holding that frequency and light and allowing that to become our new reality. So instead of looking around at you thinking, God, I wish I could wake them up, you hold your frequency, you hold your light, and you understand that alone is good enough to help. Now, when people are ready to come to you, they will. And you can just trust that process. You don't have to force. I don't force anyone to come to me. I send out the information through my energy field, through speaking, through sharing, through, putting myself out there. And those who are ready for this type of energy work in this frequency will come to me. I am not here to convince anybody to come into my energetic field, because you have to be able to be willing to match my frequency and eventually reside alongside me and maybe even ahead of me at some point. We all go back and forth through this life, and sometimes the teacher becomes the student and the student becomes the teacher, and there's a shift, and we have to be okay with that. We have to understand that this isn't a competition. This is a alignment. We're all here working towards our own unique alignment. So the overall message in this is stay focused on your own frequency and understand that you creating your reality then impacts the reality around others, and that you do have a purpose here on earth, even if it is just sit in a room or go to your work or sit with your family, whatever that is, and just hold the light. Don't shrink it, hold it. Holding light does not mean you have to do anything or say anything. Holding light means I am love. I am love. I am love. I hope this helps whoever this finds today. And if you are looking for support or guidance, I would love to have you join either my Ascension membership or my Healer Circle and find a community of like-minded people that are also on this journey and get some support that way. So until we meet again, I wish you the best day, night, evening, whatever time it is for you. I send you all the universal love. Namaste.